Hey guys, it's Sam, and today I'm going to be doing the Bookish Beginnings tag. I was tagged by the creator Lauren of Reads and Daydreams, and it's really funny the timing of that because I just discovered her channel like 2 days ago and marathoned all her videos, and then I woke up to her saying that she tagged me in this video, and I was like, that's awesome, because I've been really meaning to talk about some of these topics anyway, and it was really perfect timing. Side note, I did get new glasses. How do we feel about them? I'm getting used to them. I can't decide. They're bigger than my old glasses, but I kind of like them. Let me know what you think, but don't be mean. So it's really good timing because my dad is actually in town. My parents are both visiting from Illinois. You guys probably know if you watch my channel for a while that I live on the East Coast and my parents are living in the Midwest. That's where I used to live. So he's in town and I wanted him to answer these questions with me because he's one of the reasons that I started reading. He is a huge reader. He's been reading his whole life. And he was one of the reasons that I started reading as a kid because I always saw him reading. So I wanted him to kind of discuss with me some of his reading journey because obviously he is much older than I am, so I wanted to kind of see like how reading tastes change and how he got started reading and all these kinds of fun reading topics. We're gonna kind of cut back and forth between me being solo and him being here because we're gonna film all of his stuff and then he's gonna go to bed and then I'm gonna film the rest of mine. So there's gonna be a little bit of editing here, but he will be here talking about his little story as well. So let's get going. Alright, so question number one is tell us about what you loved to read as a child.
Well, I do remember I started out with science fiction, but then I kind of blossomed out into things like westerns and mysteries. But like I told you, I read a lot of Ray Bradbury. But then, quite frankly, I drifted away from that as I got older. I don't think I read much science fiction since.
So were those like science fiction series or were they like one book?
No, one book at a time, and I didn't concentrate on one person. If I found something with science fiction, I read it.
So I talked about this question briefly before myself, but when I was little I used to read a lot of the American Girl books. They came out with the American Doll books, but actually yesterday I was thinking about historical fiction because my family and I went to Gettysburg, which is kind of close by, it's like 2 hours away. But basically I was thinking of looking up different books revolving around Gettysburg and then different historical fiction around the Civil War and stuff like that. Then I thought I should look up stuff around the Titanic. So I looked down some lists of historical fiction surrounding the Titanic, and the first book that popped up was actually a book I remember reading and loving, and this author had a whole series of historical fiction books that I think might have been for kids, but I'm not sure because it was on this general list, so maybe it was adult and I just didn't know. I'm not really sure. And that book was The Voyage on the Great Titanic, The Diary of Margaret Ann Brady. And that was part of the Dear America series. Here is the cover, but it was a very interesting kind of historical fiction, and it was diaries of girls, I think it was always girls, that were writing around specific time periods. I think there was other ones that were like Civil War and stuff like that, but I remember specifically reading this one because I love the movie Titanic, and this was about the Titanic, and I liked history surrounding the Titanic. So I've talked about the American Girl ones before, but this is another one. I apparently really liked historical fiction when I was younger, and I continue to like it to this day, so that's kind of a trend that has continued with me. What was the first adult fiction that you tried to read? So when you branched out from, but you were reading science fiction, so you were reading adult books.
Well, when you say what first adult fiction, you mean something that was a little racy for kids?
No. Like, because now we have young adults, so most of these books are young adult books, because I'm reading like the teen 20 genre. So you guys didn't really have, you weren't having the young adult, whatever. It was all adult books. Right. Everyone was reading adult books.
The first book I remember reading that I don't consider a child book that really caught my attention was Catcher in the Rye. And then about the same time, and I don't know whether Catcher in the Rye was first or How Green Was My Valley. And
those are books that now a lot of kids are assigned in school. So
yeah, but I didn't. This wasn't a school assignment.
Right, this was just, yeah, that's just something that you read, but they, you know, now people are required to read those, it seems like, usually as young adults, which is funny how it switches. So the first adult book that I remember reading was actually the first book in the Mary Gentry series, another series that I've talked about a lot. It's by the same author who wrote the Anita Blake series, which I read later, but the first adult book was that book, which is part of an urban paranormal fantasy series about fairies, and that book was called A Kiss of Shadows. I read through all the books in that series that was released, and then I went into the Anita Blake series and read all of those. But those were the books that I was reading when I was younger and stuff. I was reading a lot of those books as a teenager instead of like Harry Potter and everything. So those were my first adult books outside of adult fiction that I had to read for school. So what was the first classic that you read, and not because of school? Like, you know, was it like Dickens or Count of Monte Cristo, or do you remember?
Okay, well, Treasure Island, I remember. I love that. And
that's a pirate book, right?
Yeah.
See, pirate books.
Right.
I like pirate books. Not
but actually, Catcher in the Rye, I think, is considered a classic.
Now it is, yeah.
But I had read that. It wasn't a school assignment, so I picked that up on my own, too. Yeah.
The first classic book that I remember reading, not because of school, was actually Wuthering Heights. And I decided to pick this up because I actually saw an MTV movie version of this, which I cannot find, and I loved it. The girl that was in Swim Fan was in it, if you guys have any recollection of those movies. But I really wanted to pick up the book after it, and I read it, and I think I was maybe 14 or so, maybe 13, I don't exactly remember, but this book's a little dense for a younger teenager. I'm sure there's plenty of people that have read it as a younger teen, but it's kind of dense, and the language is kind of confusing because some of the characters have the same names, and it's taking place in different timelines for those of you that haven't read it. So I was a little confused. I don't remember really digesting a lot of it, but I do really love this book. I love this as a classic, and I've watched a lot of the adaptations of it for TV as well. I just really find it very angsty, and it's tragic. It's not a romance. I originally went into it because of the movie that I had watched, thinking it was a romance, and it's not, but I really enjoyed this one, even back when I read it the first time, even though I didn't really comprehend much of it. And what was the book that made you realize that you like a certain genre? Like, is there a genre that you like? So now, what is your favorite genre?
Historical fiction, but I love thrillers. I like westerns. If somebody recommends a book, I don't care what genre it is, I read it.
Yeah, but your favorite would probably be historical fiction.
Yeah, it is now, and has been for 30 years probably.
Do you remember the book that you read first that was your first historical fiction? What got you into being like, oh, I think I like this? Or was it just like, I like history, so I'm going to like historical fiction?
I think that's it, yeah. And it didn't matter what history. If it was historical, I liked it.
Right.
So.
This varies depending on what genre I'm currently into. So I'm constantly kind of rotating the genres that I'm into at any given point. So when I was really into paranormal because of Twilight got me into paranormal, and then I discovered the urban paranormal fantasy with the Mary Gentry series and the Anita Blake series. Then as far as really getting into fantasy series, I think that started with Sabriel, which is the first book in that Porcelain trilogy by Garth Nix. There's also a prequel novel that's out now. I've talked about the series before. I read it in high school. I think I was a junior in high school when I read them, and after that I really stuck to fantasy after that. I just really loved this world and how it was different and the magic system, and also this covers a kind of traveling between life and death, which is a theme that I really enjoy, and I'll read in any kind of book. So I really enjoyed this, and this was really, I think, what hooked me on fantasy. More recently, I've also gotten into magical realism, and I think that kind of started with The Night Circus. The Night Circus is technically a fantasy, but there is some element of magical realism just because it takes place in a world that technically doesn't know about magic. You know, so it's kind of that like borderline between, is this magical realism, is it fantasy, da-da-da-da. Obviously it is more fantasy leaning, but I think this was like the gateway into more magical realism for me. And then I read a little bit of Neil Gaiman with Stardust, which is obviously a fantasy, but then I transitioned into The Ocean at the End of the Lane, which I didn't completely love while reading it, but afterwards it really stuck with me, and this is definitely a magical realism novel, so I was still kind of being like, maybe I like magical realism. I think I do. And then The Strange and Beautiful Sorrows of Ava Lavender by Leslie Walton happened, and that's where I fully decided that I enjoy magical realism. I enjoy the kind of writing that tends to go along with magical realism. I like how layered the stories tend to be, and how they're more of a character study a lot of times with magical realism, and they're just so beautiful. The writing is always beautiful, and the characters are always stunning, and you just really never know what's real and what's fake, and I actually kind of enjoy those kind of vague stories, so this book firmly solidified my love of magical realism. Have you read any literary prize winners that particularly stand out? Like Man Booker, National Book Award, any of those?
Well, literary prize winners, for my age and my generation, it was Steinbeck, you know, Of Mice and Men, Hemingway, Old Man and the Sea, stuff like that.
Did you like those when you read them? Or did
I liked them. Yeah. But I didn't actually go after them. I just happened to either stumble down them. At one time, I found a book many years ago in the library that was 70 years of bestsellers. Now, some of those turned out to be Pulitzer Prize winners. Others was just general books.
Right, just that,
so,
yeah. So you didn't read them because they were a prize winner.
No.
It was just, this looks good.
Well, to be honest, in the last 5 or 10 years, the one I read a lot of is Anne Perry, and she's historical 1800s detective stories. So
Okay.
that's really, if you were going to say I'm into something now, that would be it. I've been reading a lot of those for the last 10 years.
My dad wanted me to mention, because he thought of it after we stopped filming his part, that he actually started reading these prize-winning books after seeing their usually prize-winning movies. So he would see the movie version of a Hemingway or of a Steinbeck novel or of anything like that, and then he would want to read the book, which is really funny because I have a lot of times watched a movie version before reading the book version, so we're very similar in that way, and I found that really funny. But over this past year, this has been the first time that I've really started to look at prize-winning novels. Before, I never really cared. I would see the sticker on there, whatever, but I really didn't care. But ever since last year's Man Booker Awards, I've started to kind of pay attention to nominees and stuff of book awards, especially the really big ones like the Man Booker or the National Book Award, and kind of trying to see like maybe if I want to read some of those. So last year, I kind of got into it too late to really start reading all of those. There are a lot of them that are on my wish list for last year that were nominated that I never really got to read. But this year I do want to try to read and pick up some of the short list. We will see if that happens. I really do want to see, I don't have time for the long list, but I want to see if I can get through some of the ones on the short list and kind of see. So I'm starting to pay a little more attention to literary awards because I do want to read some more literary fiction. I just don't know where to start, and I figure that looking at the awards and stuff is a good place to kind of go and start out from. One book that I have read, but I actually read it before it was an award winner, was All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. I absolutely love this book. I've done a review on it. I read this before it was even nominated for the award, but then I read it, did a review on it, then I saw it was nominated, then saw that it won. So it was kind of cool to know that I'd read that book. And yes, I think that book is great too. An award winner that I want to read but haven't managed to pick up yet is The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt, which won the Pulitzer Prize. And this is a hunky book, but I have really been intrigued by it since the first time I heard about it. I've wanted it since last year when I first heard about it, and I want to be able to give it the time that I feel like it will need for me to really digest it. A lot of these award-winning books, I actually want to be able to take my time, where sometimes I just feel like rushing through a book. So at this point in time with school and everything, I like to read a little more quickly and have more fast-paced reads, but this I want to be able to kind of like sit with it. So maybe over like winter break or something I might pick this up because that's really been calling to me, but I just don't feel like I have the time to really give to it right now, but I want to really bad. Alrighty, and then I think this is the last one. What was the first piece of translated fiction that you read, or can you think of a translated?
You know, I knew you were going to ask me that, but I think the only thing, I've never read classic translations from Spanish, Russian, whatever it might be. The only thing I really did try to read from translation was of War and Peace. But I gave up on it because, I don't know if you've ever tried it, but the characters in that, they'll have 3 or 4 different names. It's Count Rabovich, and then
it's Russian, right?
Yeah, but he used different names for the same character depending on where it was in the novel. So I couldn't keep track of the novels.
Yeah, because Russian, they'll have like a casual name and then your official name and then the name that your family will use for you. So they just switch between all those.
So I kind of gave up on it.
And isn't that like this big? It's like a huge book.
Oh, it's huge, yeah. But that doesn't scare me. I read Kevin Follett, I've read in the last few years. He's written a lot of huge novels, and I read those. But the translation and the way that Tolstoy wrote that book, I couldn't keep up with it, so I read a chapter or 2 and I gave it up.
Yeah, so I want to try to read Anna Karenina, but I haven't yet.
Yeah. No, I have never really followed that since. Maybe that's why, because it discouraged me.
Yeah. I have actually not read a ton of translated fiction, but I want to, but again, it's another place that I don't really know where to start. Some translated fiction I have read was the Ruby Red trilogy by Kristen Gear, and I did not enjoy this. And I'm not sure if it got lost in translation, or if it just wasn't my thing. I just really didn't enjoy it. I've done a review on this, which I will link, but it was not a good time, and this is the only translated fiction I could think of that I have read so far. But I do really want to get into Haruki Murakami. I have heard amazing things, and again, he's a magical realism author, so if you guys have any recommendations of where to start with Murakami, like if you've read a lot of Murakami, please let me know. I don't like creepy stuff, so I'm not sure if he goes the creepy way, sometimes magical realism does. I'm not into creepy stuff, but if you can recommend me something that is magical realism that's not creepy, I would love to read it. Let me know if you have read Murakami and you know what to recommend. Please let me know down below because I would love to pick up something by him. Alrighty, well thank you for answering the questions. This is Dad for everybody, so that is his literary journey, right? Yeah. Question number 7 is a question obviously my dad didn't answer because it's related to Booktube, and that is, tell us why you started Booktube and what it was like to film and upload your first video. So I started Booktube because I had always been watching YouTube videos, whether it was beauty gurus or vloggers or everything, and I just didn't really know how I could start my own channel because I felt like I wasn't well versed enough in any of these topics. I did makeup and I liked makeup, but I didn't feel like I could add anything to that discussion. And as far as vlogging, like, I'm not particularly funny, and so I didn't really feel like I could do anything with that. But then I discovered Booktube and I was like, this is where I need to be. I can talk about this. I've been a reader my entire life. I want to have book discussions. I have a lot of friends that don't read, or they only read very sporadically, so I didn't feel like I had anybody to really talk about books with, besides my dad, who obviously reads whatever, but I felt like I wanted to talk about books with somebody that was reading it along the same time, or just read it, or whatever. So as soon as I discovered Booktube, I made a channel, I thought of a channel name, I did everything, and I decided to film my first video, which is a review of a fairy tale retelling, which is Strands of Bronze and Gold by Jane Nickerson. It was an interesting experience. I didn't know what to think. I never talked in front of a camera before at all. I'm not any kind of like actor or anything, so I just had no kind of experience with like talking to people on a camera. It was just very weird. So I set my camera up in front of my window. If you go back and watch the video, it's kind of dark, but I do have natural lighting. This room was completely different. I didn't have any shelves like this or anything, and I just kind of talked about the book, and I was very quiet. I was like this, and this was my proper speaking voice. And I don't even know if you can hear me right now, but I had a roommate in the other room, and I didn't want her to hear me. Even if she wasn't home, I'd be afraid that she would have come home and that she'd hear me. So I just was very quiet, very reserved, very proper, and I had never edited a video before either. I was actually using Windows Movie Maker, and I never used it before, so that was a learning experience. Whenever you learn how to edit videos, it's a new experience. Whenever you switch software or you're just starting, it's always a cluster. So that was interesting. But I was really proud of my first video. I was so excited. I made my boyfriend watch it a few times and just be like, is that good? Is that good? And he was very supportive of it. So pretty much for the first couple months of making videos, I made sure that he watched all my videos. Now I can upload whatever and it's fine, and I'm confident in my content, but back then I was very nervous, and I was so excited to get some of those first comments and those first subscribers and stuff. So this tag was a lot of fun. I'm going to be tagging a couple people. I'm going to tag Kayla from Bookadoodles, I'm going to tag Marinez from My Name is Marinez, and I'm going to tag Mike from Slice of Mike. So comment down below, let me know what your favorite genre is and what the book is that got you into that genre. It really is kind of fun to discover what books get people into what genre and stuff like that. So comment down below and let me know. So thank you all for watching, and I'll see all of you guys soon. Bye!